President Joe Biden is allegedly, or he's supposed to be, pushing G7 leaders to hold China and Russia in check while tackling global problems like infrastructure funding and artificial intelligence. Are we likely to see any big outcomes out of this, Joe?
Well, Biden's trying to push the Europeans to accept his plan on either seizing Russian assets, that is, to cash them in, or to take the interest from the assets. And of course, the Europeans are not too crazy about this because, Gabriella, two countries can play the same game. When a lot of these assets are in European banks, and if the Russians want to play hardball with the Europeans, they can freeze their assets. In 1917, the Bolsheviks seized American assets in Russia, and then it took 20 years to unravel the problems that it caused. It's really kind of a non-starter. And of course, Biden is obsessed with Ukraine. I don't want to shock your viewers, but we have lost the war in Ukraine. It's over. The only person who doesn't know it's over is President Biden. We should be looking for ways to maybe help Ukraine or rebuild it later on. But this idea of trying to give them armaments when we should be offering them diplomatic solutions is ridiculous. And I tell you what Joe Biden's doing is not going to save one life in Ukraine between now and when the conflict ends. And of course, all Biden wants to do, Gabriella, is to keep the loss of Ukraine out of the news until the election is over. He's obsessed with that. And you notice how he hangs around Zelensky.
Is that why he's obsessed with it? Because the election's coming up? Or in your view, why is he, as you say, obsessed with Ukraine?
Well, he's trying to push it into the weeds until the election's over. I mean, he can't have an election where people say he lost Ukraine. When I was a kid, people used to say that presidents lost China, they lost South Vietnam, they lost Iran, and all the rest of it. That's the kind of game that politicians play after they've lost a war. Look, the Russians are going to win this war. They've worn them down. And, as I've said day one, President should have used all his diplomatic power to try to stop this from happening. And of course, he didn't call Putin. He hasn't called him during the course of the war, but he's met Zelensky on numerous occasions, offered him everything but American troops, and offering him all this kind of hope. And the president's attachment to this character just strikes me as incredibly odd. He gives him whatever he wants, and Zelensky ain't all that popular at home because, after all, he is losing the war. They've lost a lot of men, and they've lost a lot of infrastructure. In fact, if you look very closely at Ukraine, it looks like it's been pulverized by Russian artillery, which it has, as a matter of fact. So we should be looking for a decent end for this war. And look, I have no problem in defending your territory. But when you are defeated and the enemy's all around you, what chance does Ukraine have against a nation that has 11 time zones? Zero. We should have known how this was going to turn out. And look, I think to ask Ukrainians to fight to the last man for American or European objectives is a bit much. And of course, the Europeans are scared to death that the United States will turn their back on them. And if President Trump returns in November, that's what he's going to do. When he says he'll bring that war to a close, what he means is there's no more armaments going that way. And of course, half the American people believe that the time has come to stop arming Ukraine and to bring the war to a conclusion.
Professor Joe Siracusa, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour.
Okay, thank you.